How is it going? Welcome back to First and Short. Today is October 5th, Sunday. We are wrapping up week 6. Man, just me today. Aaron is taking some well-deserved time off, so it's just me, your host, Mashfik. Before we get started, just want to say, please subscribe. We actually hit 100 subscribers, so we're in the 3-digit territory, so that's fun. But we want to increase that, Apple Podcast and the Spotify channels as well. So if you're able to, please go ahead and, subscribe on that side as well. So week 6, we're going to go ahead and get started because there is a lot to cover there, and I want to keep this short instead of going into first and long territory. I think I mentioned that it might be a sleepy weekend this time around. Shame on me for even entertaining that. This week had a lot of upsets. It had a lot of interesting games. Teams that should have won, but didn't. If you should have won, you would have won, right? So teams that could have won were favored to win, but didn't, right? So I went 6-1 in my picks. Aaron went 5-2. At a high level, this is some of the games that occurred over the weekend. Mississippi State, they went up to Texas A&M. That was actually our underdog pick of the week, and we were wrong on that one. We thought they were going to keep it closer than 15 points, I think it was. But Texas A&M, they beat Mississippi State by 22, actually. We'll go a little bit deeper into a few of these other games, but Penn State lost at UCLA. Texas lost at Florida. Vanderbilt went up to Alabama looking for a repeat of last year, but instead Alabama got the revenge and won there. Texas Tech, my Big 12 favorite, they won against Houston, so now I think they are solid second place in the Big 12. And Kentucky went up to Georgia for Georgia's homecoming game. Georgia won that one, and then Miami went to Tallahassee and beat Florida State, and now Miami controls the state of Florida. So let's go ahead and get started with number 9, Texas at Florida. They visit Gainesville for the first time since 1940, and then they lose the game 29-20. While this is a big upset, I don't necessarily think this was the biggest surprise. We've seen ways that Texas had deficiencies throughout their team, but we'll get to that. We'll get to them in a minute. Let's talk about the winners first. Billy Napier, towing the line with unemployment, manages to shock one of the best rosters in college football in terms of talent, in terms of how much money they're getting paid, and they win a big one at home. DJ Lackway, he looked good. 21 for 28, 298 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 interception. I know that his foot was in a boot or something earlier this week. His foot looked fine to me today. I want to highlight 2 names on that offense, on Florida's offense, running back Jaden Baugh and true freshman wide receiver Dallas Wilson. Baugh, he's a sophomore running back. He carried the ball a career-high 27 times for 107 rushing yards, and he scored 1 touchdown. I think this was a key to, he was the key to Florida's, ground game. It put up a total of 159 total rushing yards, and he had 107 of them. And they were able to do this against a Texas run defense that entered the game ranked number 3 nationally, allowing just under 60 yards per game, 60 yards rushing per game. And they were able to do 100, basically 100 more than what Texas was averaging before. So shout out to Florida for being able to do that against that defense. Dallas Wilson, in his first ever college game, he's been dealing with an injury since the preseason. He caught 6 passes for 111 yards with 2 touchdowns. So one of those touchdowns was, a spectacular 55-yard score where he stiff arm, spun, and then ran over. Sorry, I was trying to pantomime all that. Then ran over a Texas defender, at the goal line. Very bright future for him. Very bright future if they can continue to lean on him in terms of the Florida's offense. So 2 very special offensive players. Glad that DJ Lagway was able to find them. Glad that the Florida offense was able to use them and get this huge win. Like I mentioned before, Texas, they've had deficiencies, especially on the offensive side. People say what they say about Arch and all that sort of stuff. Even before this game, everyone's going to point their finger at Arch for Texas's mishaps, for Texas's failure in this game. Yeah, he threw 2 interceptions, but he also threw 2 pretty good touchdowns, in my opinion. So I would rather point the finger at the Swiss cheese that is their offensive line. Florida's defensive line, they got 6 sacks on the quarterback, which is more than Texas's offensive line has allowed in their last 3 games combined. And the Texas offensive line could not get any running lanes open. They were only able to gain 52 yards on 26 attempts. So that's 2 yards a carry, as a complete team, in terms of their runners. And Arch Manning had over half of those rushing yards, actually. So you can't be a physical, championship contender with your running backs getting locked down like that. They're going to have to do some soul searching in terms of what their goals are going to be at the end of this season, if they can't get that part right. Granted, Florida's defense is very good, probably one of the better defenses they're going to see throughout the rest of the year, but still, if they want to win a national championship, they're going to have to figure that part out. But in any case, because they weren't able to run the ball, this put them in way too many obvious passing situations, which, led to those interceptions that we mentioned earlier. The pressure was so intense for Arch Manning. The final sequence ended with him getting sacked twice on the final drive before the clock ran out. And, for a Texas team that wants to be a playoff contender, their quarterback got planted on the turf an average of once every 10 passing plays. So quite a bit. So now the preseason number 1 team in Texas is 3-2 on the season, losing both of their Power 4 games that they've played so far. Ohio State being the first one, and now in conference opponent Florida. So what did Florida do so well to throw Texas off of their game? Texas has a very explosive offense, can be very explosive. And how do you control that explosivity? You have to control the game's flow, the time, the clock, the tempo. Florida was able to do that methodically, kind of grinding out drives that kept the explosive Texas offense off the field. They controlled the clock. I think it was, 34 minutes and 7 seconds compared to Texas's 25. So Florida had 22 first downs. Texas had 16. And they ran a total of 65 plays that really grinded down and made that Texas defense tired. What's next for each of these teams? So Florida is finally on the board with a win in the SEC. Next week they go to College Station and they actually play another Texas team, Texas A&M. Texas A&M is looking good. Florida, well, we'll make those picks later. For Texas, maybe just not a college football playoff shoe-in anymore. Their entire season focus now shifts to maybe salvaging an SEC title run, which starts with the, it's already started, but now they have the Red River rivalry next week. Great rivalry game. Tough name to say, for me at least. They face number 5 Oklahoma. We all know, Mateer and that Oklahoma offense and defense is looking really good. So I don't know. Texas might be in a little trouble. So, after yesterday's loss, the Longhorns are now staring down the barrel of a potential 3-3 start and an 0-2 SEC record heading into, the meat of the rest of their schedule. So lots to look forward to there in terms of trying to get better and learning from their past mistakes. So let me take a sip of water. So we had 2 teams that have national championship aspirations lose last week and had a chance to bounce back this week. One of these teams, they took care of business. They shored up weaknesses on their offensive line and other areas of concern, and they focused on their identity. The other team lost to a team that hasn't led a single second of a game before this weekend. These 2 teams are UGA and Penn State. UGA played Kentucky. Penn State played UCLA. We'll start with Georgia first. Georgia played Kentucky in their homecoming game, and they won the game 35-14. Georgia hasn't lost back-to-back in the regular season since 2016. After that Alabama loss, there were questions about the offensive line. There were questions about the secondary, the defense, pretty much the whole team. The secondary is still looking a little shaky, in my opinion, but their offensive line finally looks like it's gelling, or at least getting better, with all the injuries and restructuring and mishmashing that they've had to do. They were able to lean in on their running game. Running back Chauncey Bowens, he is looking like a star in the making. He looks like one of those classic, Georgia running backs. In his first start, he led the team with 70 yards on 15 carries. And more impressively, Georgia's quarterback, Gunnar Stockton, he was the leading touchdown scorer on the ground with 2 rushing touchdowns himself. So this allowed Georgia to control the clock and the flow of the game, like we mentioned earlier with Florida. This is, Georgia has always, especially with Kirby Smart, has always leaned on the running backs to open up the rest of their offense. And it seems like over the last year or two, they haven't been able to do that. So it's nice to see them being able to get back to their roots and find their identity, like I mentioned before. The other team, Penn State, that had the chance to get back right this weekend, but they did not. Penn State did not get back right. They had to travel all the way across the country to play a conference opponent, with number 7 Penn State ultimately losing to UCLA 37-42. I find it hard to feel bad for a team that's in a conference that wants to include people on the other side of the country in said conference. If that's the way you want to cannibalize your conference because you're one of your teams that is a CFP, favorite, a favorite to win the national championship, and they have to deal with jet lag on a week-to-week basis, if that's how you want to cannibalize your conference, go for it. UCLA did everything they needed to do on special teams to win this game. Onside kick recovery, after scoring their first touchdown, intentionally giving Penn State the safety so that Penn State would start further down the field. Let's look at this onside kick real quick. So UCLA just scored touchdown. They're about to do a kickoff. Penn State, you'll see, they're leaving the entire side of the field open. Not that you would expect an onside kick here. Boom. Just easy stuff. Doing everything they can that they need to do in order to win. And then James Franklin just looking confused. So UCLA is able to get the win with their interim head coach, Tim Skipper, and first-time offensive coordinator Jerry Neuheisel. Questions have to be asked, like, if James Franklin can't beat this team, then anyway, this vaunted Penn State defense was run over, controlled, and demoralized by our quarterback, who had a career day. This quarterback being Nico Iamaleava, resulting in a disastrous kind of time of possession split. UCLA ran for a whopping 269 yards. Penn State only had 157, and they controlled the clock for 39 minutes and 17 seconds, almost 2/3 of the game. So Nico looked great. He was the undisputed star of this matchup. He had 5 total touchdowns, 2 passing, 3 rushing, and he actually led the team with his rushing stats, 128 rushing yards. So this performance was pretty dominant, if you ask me, and it tied the record for most rushing touchdowns by a UCLA quarterback in a single game. Jim Knowles' defensive system on the Penn State side really had no answer for this running quarterback, and it allowed UCLA to convert on 10 of 16 of their third down attempts. So, Jim Knowles, national championship winning defensive coordinator, just didn't have an answer for this guy who just entered into this new team's kind of offensive system. But the game was the game. But it does continue a deeply concerning trend for James Franklin when he's a heavy favorite to win a game. UCLA entered the game 0-4 and was a 24.5 point underdog. like I mentioned before, UCLA has, before this game, did not lead for a single second in any of their 4 losses. Or at least that's what I read on Twitter. I actually didn't double check that one. My bad. Franklin has now lost 3 games as a favorite of 20 points or more at Penn State. A team that's built to compete for a title simply can't have this kind of smudge on their resume. It immediately raises questions on whether this team is mentally tough enough, if they feel like they're together enough to be an elite program. Despite the loss, Penn State, they showed signs of life offensively, which I hadn't seen before in certain aspects, especially from Drew Aller and one of their running backs. But a big question for me is the usage of Kaytron Allen. When he was playing, he looked great, but they didn't give him the ball that much, so I wasn't sure about that one. Quarterback for Penn State, Drew Aller, he had one of his better games. He passed the ball well when he did, but the Nittany Lion, coaching staff, they completely underutilized Kaytron Allen. Like I mentioned, he rushed for 50 yards and he had 2 touchdowns on only 8 carries. So he was averaging 6.25 yards a carry. The question is, why not use him more if that's the type of efficiency that you're getting out of him? So Drew Aller, he led the team with 78 rushing yards on 11 attempts, but the offense was really struggling with consistency. I'm just going to ask again, when your most efficient running back has only 8 touches in a game where you're trying to mount a comeback, it spotlights honestly a fundamental flaw in the offensive game planning for this game. Not sure what James Franklin was trying to accomplish with that one. So let's talk about another team that lost back-to-back games. Number 3, Miami, they roll into Tallahassee and they beat number 18 Florida State 28-22. Florida State obviously losing last week against Virginia, and then this week now to Miami at home. And when I say Miami rolled into Tallahassee, they were rolling. It was 28-3 heading into the fourth quarter, which sounds familiar if you're a Falcons fan. But anyway, Florida State, they scored 19 unanswered points in the fourth quarter to make the game pretty interesting. Like, if you just look at the score, you would think this was a battle. It wasn't up until the fourth quarter. And, it made you wonder if this was going to be one of those classic Mario Cristobal meltdown type of games. But luckily for Miami, the hole that they dug the Seminoles into was too deep for them to climb out of by the end of the game. Miami's defense, they forced 3 turnovers while the Miami team had 0 of their own. That's going to be key because Miami had less than 100 rushing yards for the whole game. They had 13 penalties to Florida State's only had 5. They had less passing yards than Florida State. So all these stats point to a team that should have lost the game. But again, it was those 3 turnovers that got it done for them. The key to the game that we mentioned in the last episode, Carson Beck, play your game and don't force anything. This team around you is good enough to win without you having to do too much. And he delivered. 20 of 27, 241 yards, 4 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. His main target, true freshman Malachi Toney, breakout game. We've been talking about him since week 1. 7 catches for 107 yards and 2 touchdowns. Miami was able to shut down the running game of Florida State from a defensive standpoint. Coming into this game, Florida State was averaging 230 rushing yards per game. Against Miami, the Hurricanes defense held the Seminoles to only 132 rushing yards on 38 carries, averaging a season-low 3.5 yards per rush. So, shout out to Miami. Listen, if Carson Beck's playing well, I'm his biggest fan. Let's just say, I know he played at Georgia. I know he did what he did his last year there, and I know how his tenure ended there. I'm the biggest Carson Beck fan, so I'm glad he is doing well at Miami. Looking ahead, Miami's in the CFP. I don't know what else to tell you. The rest of their schedule is cake. They play Louisville, Stanford. They play at SMU, Syracuse, North Carolina State, at Virginia Tech, at Pitt. I don't see them losing one of those games. Funny enough, though, they are 4th on the ACC leaderboard behind Virginia, Duke, and Georgia Tech, and they actually don't play any of those teams. So not sure how that's gonna shake out there. But Florida State still has to go to Clemson and to Florida on their schedule. So not sure what the schedule looks like for them either the rest of this year. But at least they've made an improvement since last year, which the bar wasn't too high in order to do that. Man, when you're the only one talking, you get a lot more thirsty. All right, last game I want to cover. And in the last episode, we called this one revenge or repeat, depending on who won this game. But number 16, Vanderbilt played at number 10, Alabama. And the Commodores had their ship sunk. Alabama won the game 30-14. The game was actually pretty close at halftime. It was 14-14 at halftime. That's as close as you can get. But Vanderbilt's offense was just completely shut down in the second half. The key difference was Alabama's ability to adjust to the Commodores' powerful run game. Vanderbilt's running backs were cooking Alabama's defense early. They logged 126 rushing yards in the first half. That's 12.7 yards per carry. But Alabama's defense really put the clamps on in the second half. Vanderbilt was held to only 9 rushing yards total in the entire second half. So, definitely a lot of halftime adjustments there. Ty Simpson, he had an outstanding day. He threw for 340 yards while completing 23 of 31 passes. That's a 74% completion rate. There was a 4th and 7 conversion. For their first touchdown, for Alabama's first touchdown, I think in the second quarter. That extended the drive for Alabama, and that really shows to me. Yes, it's at home, but his Ty Simpson's ability to convert in a high pressure situation, especially an intermediate throw like that, it's a new wrinkle in his game that makes this offense really, really dangerous. I think Alabama learned a hard lesson from last year's upset to Vanderbilt, where the Commodores' ball control, which leads to time control, clock control, ground them down a lot from a defensive standpoint. This year, Kalen DeBoer flipped the script and won the game with time management. They held the ball for over 37 minutes of the game. So Vanderbilt's powerful offense, Diego Pavia, and everything that he brings, they were on the sideline for basically an entire quarter of the game. And, that wear and tear on your defense is definitely a silent killer. So while Vanderbilt's offense was one of the best in the nation entering into this game, when they were on the field, they failed to capitalize on high leverage, scoring territory. Which is what separates, good teams from the great ones. So Alabama was perfect in the red zone. They scored points on 4 out of 4 of their trips there. Vanderbilt, they had 2 critical turnovers in the red zone. They had a fumble on the Alabama 8-yard line and an interception on the 20-yard line. So those 2 things can lead to a difference. They were poised to score on both of those drives, but Alabama's defense forced those 2 kind of turnovers that equals 0 points. It's hard to win on the road in the SEC in Tuscaloosa against a top 10 team, leaving 14 points, on the field. I know Alabama won by 16, but those 14 points would at least give you a more fighting chance to do something at the end of the game. So that was the story there. All right, well, that's pretty much it. We're going to wrap this one up. Next week, we have the Red River rivalry. God, the 3 R's. I can't get that one right. Texas and Oklahoma, of course. Indiana will be going up to Oregon. Georgia will be playing Auburn at night game at Jordan-Hare. Michigan's going to USC. So lots of good games to cover. Aaron will be back on Thursday Looking forward to covering those games with you guys, and appreciate you guys watching. First and short, please subscribe. We hit our first 100. Let's go ahead and hit that second 100 here soon. Love doing this for you guys every Sunday and Thursday. So appreciate you watching. We'll catch you on the next episode. Thanks.